Hello, I am Generation 3DX. Welcome back to my series on creating beautiful art in Daz Studio. In this second part to the series, I'll be getting right down to the fundamental building block of Daz, and that's characters. Also known as figures or people, characters are the fully rigged structures of articulating bones wrapped in a shaped mesh and finished with surfaces, skin, eyes, nails, lips, teeth, etc., that represent human beings and occasionally animals. We'll break this study down into the following: the early history of Daz, centered around its Victoria and Michael characters, the different Genesis versions, the marketplace of pre-built characters, morphs and shaping with a real-life demo of changing a pre-built character into something unique. Right from its inception, Daz was all about characters. Before Daz Studio existed as a standalone platform, it was making characters for another application called Poser. Victoria and Michael, first released in 1999, were innovations that combined articulated bones, a detailed shaped mesh, and surface textures to make human depictions possible by 3D artists. Over the next 25 years, various updates to Victoria and Michael followed, although the significance of the characters reduced with the introduction of the next Daz innovation, Genesis. Daz released Genesis in 2011 with a unified base mesh across both genders and a system that allowed much greater customization of shaping with an enhanced morph system. Genesis 2 followed in 2013 with better mesh count, better deformation at joints and more facial expressions. This trend in improvements continued further with Genesis 3 in 2015, which also had a much improved posing system. And then there was Genesis 4. Just kidding, there is no Genesis 4, 5, 6 or 7 for that matter, as the next version was Genesis 8 in 2017. It's a question that gets asked a lot, so I'll provide an answer here. Remember Victoria and Michael? New versions of the central characters continued to be released with each new Genesis version, and since they were already at version 5 with Genesis 1, they'd advanced to version 8 by the time the fourth generation of Genesis was to be released. So the decision was made to align the Genesis number with those of Victoria and Michael, hence the jump from Genesis 3 to 8. Along with the continued improvement in meshes, facial expression capabilities and joint handling, with Genesis 8 came major improvements to physically based rendering skin shaders for better realism in skin textures. A further update to Genesis 8 came in early 2021 with Genesis 8.1, with enhancements to the facial expressions rig and subsurface scattering for translucency in skin. Genesis 8 and 8.1 is what I work with exclusively, so I've gotten to know this particular family of Genesis very well. Genesis 9 is the current release, emerging in late 2022, and features a unified male-female mesh, a higher polygon count, improved facial and joint rigging, and improvements to skin and hair shaders. This release has not been without controversy, with many artists citing that improvements made have only been marginal, whereas the lack of backward compatibility on hair and clothing products is a big drawback for those who have invested considerable sums in such products. As a solid user of Genesis 8 myself, and one who has spent more than I'd like to admit on hair and clothes, I can vouch for this being the main reason why I have yet to move to Genesis 9. But if you're new to Daz, then it's recommended that you jump straight to Genesis 9. So, as an aspiring Daz artist, you can work with the stock Genesis characters, but in my opinion they're pretty basic and not particularly attractive in shape and with basic skin textures. You'll more than likely want to head over to the marketplace, either on Daz's own website or on other sites such as RenderHub or Renderosity that have hundreds and probably thousands of pre-built characters lovingly created by character artists with varying degrees of quality of skin and eye textures, from the average to, quite frankly, breathtaking. It can be a bewildering choice, and some risk involved in purchasing a character to find that it doesn't meet your expectations. If I can provide some help, the 6 main characters I have developed are listed here, along with the base character and the artist who created them. So here's a shout out to Marcus Gab, FW Art, Jaden Sabi, Muso and Rarestone. When you install a marketplace character, you sometimes get a convenient script that will load the shape and textures in one go, as is the case with Muso's Lacey here. So if we have a look at Lacey here, we're scrolling. I'll just put a bikini on her so we don't get arrested by the YouTube police. So we scroll in, and we can see that she doesn't seem to resemble the Genesis 8 character that she's based on. So how is that possible? Well, if we move over to the Shaping tab and we go to Real World, we can see what looks like Lacey here, and there's a dial. If we turn that dial down to 0, voila, our Genesis 8 female shape has returned. So when you buy a character, one of the things that you're buying is essentially it's a whole complex of shaping that has distilled into a single dial that allows you to turn that character on or off, or even if you wanted varying degrees of that character, going from 0 to 100. The second part of the character that you're buying is the textures. So if we move over to iRay preview, and if we scroll in, you'll see that is a very good looking skin that's come with the character. And so that is essentially a whole series of textures, including eyes, lips, and so forth. But the skin is really the one that you really want to look for as a really good quality one. And we can see that without getting too much into surfaces, you can go into Lacey here, and we can find that if we would look at her body texture, this is Muso's Lacey body texture there. All right. So a set of morphs to faithfully reproduce an exact shape by moving a dial is possible due to the design of the Genesis rig, which has dozens of common points on the mesh that can be moved around by a character artist using tools such as ZBrush. Such work is a somewhat specialized activity and is certainly beyond the scope of this series, but as a lowly Daz Studio user, you have the ability to apply shaping tools to create your ideal vision of the character in mind. There are no tools that come with Daz Studio to enable you to do this, so you'll need to purchase morphing add-ons from the marketplace. In my case, I've been using these 3 tools for a long time now without needing anything further. I'll link those in the description. These tools manifest themselves in the Shaping tab, but before we do that, let's switch over our character to say goodbye to Lacey, and we'll go over to, we need to reload the Genesis 8 female, because this next character doesn't come with a script to preload it. So with Genesis 8 female loaded in, I'll go down to Jaden and Sabi, and here's our Flynn character here. So the first thing we'll do is we'll click the apply all script. So what that's basically doing, it's going to apply Flynn, the shaping of Flynn, to the Genesis 8 character. If we just undo that, just go back, you can see the difference. Now notice that the skin is unchanged and the eyes are unchanged. So this is part 1, and this shows why a character is essentially 2 parts. The first part is the morph back, so go back to Genesis 8, and if we go to shaping, we can see there's Flynn there. And if we just undo that, you can see that it goes to 0. That's Genesis 8, reapply, adjust to Flynn, 100%. Okay, the second part is the materials. And so I go to the materials section in the content. So this is in content library, by the way. This is where everything exists. Smart content, you get only a filtered selection. More on that later. Content tab, the artist's name, the character name, and then we go to materials, we click on Flynn All Maps. A map is basically another word for surfaces. So we can see here, this is a much superior version of both the eyes and the skin texture. It's really quite a nice skin texture on this. If I undo that, you can see that's the base. That's the basic skin texture that comes with Genesis 8. And I think Daz probably deliberately didn't do any work on making the skin textures of the basic female any good, or indeed the visual appearance of, because they know that they want to support their artists and make essentially not compete with the artists by making something too good out of the box. Right, anyway, let's go back to Flynn's map there. So you purchase a character and you think, well, actually, let's put some hair on her. The poor girl, she's bald, she's going to freeze in the winter if we don't do something to help her. Let's put that standard protostar hair on her. There we go. And let's put a bikini on her, for heaven's sake. If we ended up scrolling down, we could get arrested. Right. So let's just frame the character. There we go. Right. While I'm here, also just sort out that viewport, so we've got a bit of a wider viewport. Okay, so we'll scroll on a little bit. How do we? So you say, let's say we bought this character and we think, oh yeah, she's lovely, I'm happy with that, I will just work with her out the box. And maybe that's all a lot of you would be interested in. But let's say you had a particular character in mind, and dare I say it's some kind of actress that you like, or somebody that you know, and you wanted to make them into that character. How do you do that? Well, as mentioned, there are these shaping tools that come with these add-ons, and again, it's all in the shaping tab where all the action happens. So if I go into further down into some detail here, now these are where these dials start to appear. So RS is rare stones, so this is rare stones. Set of morphs. Before I get into the face, let's go to the waist. So for instance here, I can change her waist width. So we can give her a waspish waist, or something perhaps a little more realistic. We can even stretch her torso. I'll make her shorter. So these are obviously large, full body kind of variations here. Skinny legs or thunder thighs, and even down to things like, one thing I've noticed sometimes, characters seem to have very large hands, and I don't know if it's just my perception of ladies' hands being too small or too big, but yeah, you could have enormous hands or small hands that way. So there really is, with the three tools that I've mentioned and linked, I found that pretty much everything I need is covered. If we look at the face, scrolling to the face, this is where you're going to be more interested in creating an actual individual character who looks unique. I think there are actually hundreds of different dials that you can do. For instance, you have composite morphs like this one here, which can actually change the way the age of the character looks. That's from a girl into somebody who's more mature. Or we can do individual things, such as the height of the eyes. So this would adjust the height of the eyes but keep the brows the same. This one would actually move the eyes and the brow at the same time. We could maybe change the shape of her lips. Let me just see, there's so many that relate to the mouth, and not a surprise when you consider how everybody's mouth and lips are completely unique, and even subtle changes can actually make, you see some very, very subtle changes going on here. Upper lip shape, I mean, who would have thought that you would need lips upper mid plumpy? Okay, but apparently it's a thing. You get the general idea. Another one where really you see a lot of individuality coming out is in the eyes, and unsurprisingly there are very large numbers of morphs for making changes to eyes. For instance, here we have angled. So if you ever look at people's faces, you can see that some people have angled eyes like that, others a bit more like that. And it just, yeah, it's almost an endless degree of eyelids as well. So you can have people who've got more hooded, that's not the hooded eyelids I'm looking for, but they're around somewhere. You've got puffy lower eyelids and so forth. Anyway, you get the general idea. It can take many, many hours of a lot of patience to actually produce an individual character in this way. But I'm going to cut to the chase and actually load in one of my characters, Sansa, who is based on Jasa Flynn. So let's load her up now. Alright, so here she is. Here is my character Sansa. And if we scroll in, we can see she looks quite different. She looks quite individual. And there she is. She is based on Jasa Flynn. So the Flynn dial is set to 100. So this, how is it even possible that I could have made somebody look so totally different to the one we were just looking at? Well, believe me, it was a lot of work. And if we go into, for instance, the face dials, you can just see how much work has gone into that. I think I must have spent over several days tweaking all these different dials on the face. And she also has a different body shape as well, but not massively different. I was quite happy with Flynn's original. So this is the reward that you get for your efforts. A completely unique character that's individually yours, and that you can call your own. Okay, so an additional thing that you want to be thinking about with your characters is getting the right look in terms of the combination of skin color, eye color, hair color, and so forth. Now you can see with Sansa, she all your characters, you'll end up building up backstories and where they're from, and so Sansa's from southern France. She is so she has a kind of a slightly Mediterranean look about her. She's got dark hair, so and she's got brown eyes. Now you'll find that with European women of European or men of European extraction, you have quite a lot of options in terms of skin and eye color and hair and so forth. But generally speaking, in the case of the Mediterranean look, you're going to have darker hair and more likely to have brown eyes, and that's why I gave her that particular look here. Now by contrast, consider these two blue-eyed beauties. This is Kayla and Abigail. They're both blue-eyed. In this case with Kayla, we've got her as a blue-eyed blonde. Abby, she is a blue-eyed brunette, which you might think is quite rare, but actually they're very common in my family, which is a mix of British and Irish, English and Irish. Let's just, for fun, let's just show how things can look weird if you try to break kind of conventions of, ethnicity in terms of, it's hard to explain, but What would happen if I give Kayla brown eyes, for instance? Is it going to look strange? And let me just sort this viewport out. Yeah, so what would happen if we were to give Kayla brown eyes? I mean, you do get brown-eyed blondes. They're quite rare. And maybe that's a look that you want to go for. But it's all about whether, you know, you want something realistic or unusual. So to make changes to your character, eye colors and so forth, you find a character in Genesis 8 Female, and under the artist name, or in this case it's RN Kayla, materials. So here, eye colors, there's a brown one there, so we could try this. And she says she still looks good. She's a great character, but you can see there it's slightly more unusual to have that blonde there with the brown eyes, as opposed to, you know, the blue eyes that I gave her. I mean, she could even have lighter green eyes, potentially. I mean, those are very light eyes there, if you want to go for something almost Germanic, I guess, there, isn't it? So, switching over to Abby, when I set out with this character from the beginning, I wanted to create what is thought of can be sometimes thought of as an unusual look of blue eyes and dark hair. But we can take Abby's, go to Abby's material library, which is Frederica Art Diana materials, and we can give her dark brown eyes. And that is a very different look, and that's definitely not how I think of Abby looking. Or you could experiment with these are very unusual. Yeah, I mean, the eye color, I don't think I've ever seen a person with the eye color. That's very super blue eyes there. Anyway, you can experiment with this, and by the way, you're not restricted to go with the eye color that has come with that character. For instance, you can mix it up, and actually I do this on some of my characters. I actually have, for instance, here we can try this from this other character here, Merida. In fact, I actually have a feeling those are Abby's actual eyes. I must have used that before. And yeah, it doesn't suit her at all. You get a feel of it, but in general, I guess what I'm getting at is, especially with European characters, you tend to see trends that follow between eye color. And see Abby here, she's got very fair skin. I guess she's kind of a bit of a mix of English and Irish, to give her that much lighter skin with a slight freckling around her. Now if you want to see a proper Celtic look, let's have a look at Joni. Okay, so here's Joni. She's actually, her backstory is she's Scottish, and Scotland and Ireland have the highest percentage of redheads in the world. I think it's about 10 or 12%. And so with her being a redhead, it's very unusual to not have them have either blue or green eyes. So I gave her green eyes. I mean, we can actually give her blue. We can give her blue eyes. Yeah, it's just not her. I've used her so many times. I just, I know what she is and what she isn't, and she's definitely not that either. We could give her brown eyes, and it is an interesting look for sure. But is it realistic? It is quite rare that you see that in a redhead. Anyway, that said, I did actually make a brown-eyed redhead. Let's have a look at her. Okay, so here's my brown-eyed redhead. This is Kira. She's Irish, and I actually modelled her on the actress Kira Coveney, who is in Wheel of Time, because she actually does have that interesting combo, but it is unusual. Let's just actually show what happens if we give Kira blue eyes instead. Yeah, she's a very different look indeed, very different character. Honey eyes, yeah, she looks a little bit demonic there. Anyway, you can have so much fun with this, just all these different combos. Last but not least, let's have a look at some non-European. Okay, here's Kiana. You can clearly see she is of African extraction, and so naturally she comes with brown eyes. I don't actually have the frizzy hair, unfortunately, to demonstrate that. Actually, she probably looks better. Yeah, she looks better with black eyes than brown. And you can see, yeah, see, that just doesn't look right at all. It's just not realistic. However, if you want to imagine that she's wearing contact lenses, which they sometimes do, to give that different eye color, that's fine. But again, if you're looking for realism, I would just go with those really, really dark eyes for Kiana. Okay, last but not least, here is Hannah. Hannah is, she's Cantonese, from Hong Kong, and so naturally she's going to come with straight black hair and very dark brown eyes to go with her Asiatic look. Again, if you try to put, and it's just not right. It just looks weird because it's just not natural. It's something you're not going to see in the real world. But I guess if you wanted to create a fantasy character, that would be like that. That's fine. But she looks much better and she looks much more realistic like that. Okay, I think that wraps up everything I want to say on characters and their regarding ethnicity and eye, hair and skin colors. And that's it on characters and shaping. So I hope you've gained an understanding of what a character in Daz is, what the different Genesis versions are, and how you can shape them to your own desires and create something truly unique. In the next video, I'll be sharing with you the various ways that you can bring characters to life by articulating them bones into a realistic depiction of human behavior. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, then please like and subscribe and leave a comment. You can learn more about my art by following me at Generation 3DX on DeviantArt. I'll see you in the next video.